All right, we're here with Paul Sargent, who is an AP European history teacher. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Fine, how are you?
Good. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you teach, how long you've taught?
All right, well, I'm teaching here in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I've been teaching AP Euro for 11 years, I think, 10
Wow.
years, something like that. So, yeah, I've been through it a couple of times, and I've been through some changes, and hopefully I can help people sort of get a handle on this.
Yeah. What do you like teaching about AP Euro?
What don't I like
Or
teaching?
do you like teaching AP Euro?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the coolest course in my opinion because I mean, it has everything. It has your political history. It has, for those kids who are really sort of the deep thinkers, it really gets into the philosophy and intellectual movements.
Mhm.
We have art days. There's culture. There, I mean, literally, it is everything, which is part of the problem. It's so overwhelming because
Yeah.
it's everything, but also, it's not like a lot of history courses where you get sort of jammed into one type of history. And if you're not really into that, it can kind of just go by. I mean, this has something for everybody.
Yeah. But I guess for you guys, it's a lot more about the depth, right? Because you're in one region over, not that many years. And so, what do you think is the hardest part about planning the school year around that?
Well, we still have 600 years to cover. So like,
My
I don't know,
world history
that's
bias coming through.
few
Still a
years.
lot.
I mean, yeah, the world people are looking at us and saying, "Oh, what an easy job," And I think there's maybe a tendency to do that, but the reality is, once Europeans start moving out from Europe, and they start, which is really kind of at the beginning of the course, and the age of exploration starts. I mean, then it becomes a global history course. It's more though taught through the lens of Europe, and when the rest of the world comes into contact with the course, they come into it through Europe. So it's a different aspect, but it's still, I think, in many ways, a global history course.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't mean to downplay the amount of years. It's
No,
just
no, it's
when you have
fine.
less years, you can go more in depth on each thing that you cover. Whereas, with so many years, you just sort of roll through it. And so, yeah, it seems like that's what I would imagine is that you would sort of, you're a little bit slower in going through some of the hitting on the content.
I think we can focus a little bit more probably on specific things, like specific agreements or specific
Hmm.
um, points in history, and we don't have to be as thematic as you would, especially with the old AP World course. I
Yeah.
see they've gone through some changes, and there's still some back and forth on what that's going to look like, but it still is. You're not going to be able to get maybe as in depth on specific things as we are.
Right. Right. All right. So let's kind of cut through what a year in the life would look like for AP Euro. So maybe you could first just sort of walk us through what steps do you take to sort of plan out your year? How do you set up your year so that you make sure to hit on the most important things or, the key concepts that College Board has laid out?
Well, here's the problem. Okay, I actually ran these numbers. Someone else ran them, but I don't know why I do these things again myself. So there's 4 periods that is divided up into, which makes it kind of nice because you can sort of look at it in quarters.
Hmm.
But over the course of that, they have 19 separate main ideas, and then they have 75 main ideas, and they have 250 specific concepts that kids have to know
Whoa.
within. So the concept a day
Uh-oh.
kind of approach, it's not going to get you where you need to go. So what I usually start with is I usually start by sort of looking at my school calendar and trying to figure out exactly how many days I have. Take out a week and a half for AP review, take out however many days I'm going to need for testing and for reviewing tests. And then usually I go ahead and I just discount the first week of school, because that's so introductory and introducing kids to the key concepts and to the historical thinking skills and all that sort of stuff and the themes. So you knock all those out and you kind of then look and say like, okay, well, how much do I have to work with? The rule of thumb for so many years, and long before I started teaching this course, was that Napoleon has to die before Christmas.
Yeah.
It's not really the optimistic way of looking at things. You might want to say, the British win over Napoleon by Christmas, but whatever, however you want to look at it, that's the general rule of thumb. I actually try and pull a little bit more into the pre like winter break time, because what I find is that when we run into snow days and all of that, you get a lot more time in the beginning of the year than you do sort of at
Oh, you froze a little
the
bit.
end of the year.
There we go. Oh no, my internet is unstable.
Leading up to the oh, sorry.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on. All right, go ahead. Sorry. Can you repeat that one last sentence again?
Okay, so far too often what I found is that, I'll spend a lot of time throughout the year, but then I'll end up like finishing World War II, giving a week to the Cold War, and then we're starting to review for the exam, which is fine if, the DBQ or the writing is not about the Cold War, but man, when you get hit with one that's like full on Cold War, it's a killer.
Yeah.
So, and so that I think is sort of the hard part of it, is trying to figure it out, how you actually get to the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot. So, okay. So period one. So let's go through like a school year. So how long would you spend on the first time period?
All right, so typically the first period is going to be my slowest, most methodical period, because I'm introducing the kids to so many different things at the same time. Not only the concepts, but also like how to do the course and how to keep up with the information and how to study. So I almost push the first period, which goes all the way from the beginning of the Renaissance, all the way up until 1648. I usually almost do that for the entire first marking period. Because there are other things thrown in there, I try and take my time with that one.
Yeah.
Now, recently, last year, they just released the part that some of the writing is not going to be from the first period. So, that might cause some adjustments and people might want to de-emphasize it, but, it's still going to be on the rest of the test. So I'm going to stick with it. Plus, I like it. It's kind of just fun to teach.
Yeah.
So I'll do about the first period. Will go for about the first marking period, the first quarter of the year. The second period I get done before winter break, but I also try and throw in the Industrial Revolution, which gets into the third period before the break. Because if I can get it in before then, it's one less thing that I have to worry about, as we get back. Third marking period, or the third period, I'll try and get done probably by like the first week of March. And then hopefully that gives enough time for what's essentially the 20th and early 21st centuries to try and, get that in, with leaving another week and a half to review for the AP exam.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense. So they're about even in your school year, with the exception of like the first one maybe taking a little bit longer.
Typically. Now, I and so many teachers find that the third period of AP Euro, which is only 100 years, I mean, it's now technically, since we're in 2018, it's technically now the shortest time period of them all, but you tend to get bogged down in it because it goes from 1815 to 1914, and you just get sort of like bogged down in all of these ideologies and industrial revolution and you get national unification movements and the build up to World War I and the imperialism, and like there's so much in there that's where I think everybody starts to get bogged down. And just when you think you're coming out of it, then, you drop right into World War II. Then you have to, explain the rise of totalitarianism and all of that, and get into World War II. And all of a sudden, like, the time's gone because you're trying to explain so many things. But yeah, I try my best to set it up so that the other three periods are fairly even. as best as I can make them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So I'm curious too, like, so if I'm teaching AP Euro for the first time, I'm brand new to this, what does like an average like week in your classroom look like? How do you like set up do you set up like each week the same, or do you have some sort of like an average day, or?
It's not average.
Yeah.
It's not average. I'll tell you, one thing that I've learned over the years is that like I can sit all summer, and I've done this, and I still tend to do this. I can sit all summer and I can like plan everything out and make it look all nice. But you know, when it comes down to it, like the battle plan, the plan of attack doesn't always work, because kids are going to need different things. I might have some great ideas for the French Revolution, you know, coming up like maybe right after Thanksgiving break, and we're going to start in on the French Revolution, and we're going to delve in, we're going to do maybe a little simulation or something like that. And I get all excited about it. And then, you know, they come back from Thanksgiving break and they've got 3 weeks before they take off for winter break. And then, you know, they're not all sitting there and reading the textbook, which is what I need them to do in order to do this simulation. And so then you have to adjust, throw that out the window, maybe go with a little bit more of a traditional approach. So I kind of play it by ear as the year goes along. It all depends on what my kids are getting and not getting. It you know, depends on which type of writing skills I'm having to work on. Really, I'm typically only planned out about 2 weeks ahead of myself at any given moment.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I'm wondering too, like, maybe we can kind of go through each time period
Okay.
in terms of like, do you have major projects that you attach to each one, or assignments that you really like for each period that you could kind of like give us a little feel of maybe how you teach period one? Do you focus on any of the specific skills for period one?
Well, yeah. Okay. So when it comes to different skills, the College Board has made a real push to make sources and second sources a big part of the course. And so period one, from a skill basis, I'm focusing on helping kids be able to read a college textbook, to be able to understand not just the information that they're reading about, but also what they're not getting, to realize what they don't understand, so that then they can look for clarification on that. I'm also starting in on lots of sources, so that they're reading sources. And, you know, these are the hardest sources in many ways, because the language is a little bit more difficult than when we get into, say, the 20th century. But I'm trying to introduce sources at the same time. And then from the standpoint of the way the Euro exam is set up, I'm starting to work, period one is all about really getting the multiple choice format down. How do you read a little passage or look at a map or whatever, and then be able to answer these questions based on that source?
Yeah.
Is kind of period one is all about.
Yeah.
And the other thing I really try and do in period one is to get how varied the content is. So you know, it's a great period for it, because there's
hang on one second.
This is okay. Sorry.
Okay, so period one, primary sources, multiple choice, hitting on those like foundation skills.
And all, you know, all the different things that they can do.
Press and play again. Sorry for all the issues here.
Sure.
Sorry.
Not a problem.
Go ahead. So period one, foundational skills.
So period one, yeah, that's those foundational skills. And it's about getting them to understand different facets of history and different ways to look at the history. And just trying to sort of like get them thinking, get them being able to sort of get into the heads of some of the people from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's good for that, because the thinking, the foundational like mindset of the first period is so very different from our modern mindset that it's almost easier to have them pull and say like, okay, well, let's try and get into these people's minds. Why are they saying some of these things? Why do they think some of these things?
Mm-hmm.
And also, trying to push my students not to like throw the modern day judgmentalism on everybody.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to believe that like we've achieved perfection, and so we can look back and kind of like laugh at people in the past who didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so that's something that that the period is good at sort of breaking them up.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite assignments or projects you do in the first period?
Well, they're one of the ones that I really like, and again, a lot of what I do depends on the students I have.
Of course.
Some things work and some things don't. But one that's really neat and that has worked really well, and it's widely used in the AP Euro community, is this this sort of project called a Reformation dinner party.
That's fun.
And there are 10, 12, something like that, figures from the Reformation, major ones, Martin Luther, John Calvin, Sir Thomas More, I think, is in there, like 10 or 12 of them, right?
Yeah.
Both Catholics and Protestants, popes, rulers, theologians, like all kinds of people. The challenge is to sort of set up the seating at a dinner table so that there's going to be a conversation. They're all going to sit down together. Who do you not sit next to each other?
Yeah.
Who do you not sit across from each other? How do you arrange this so that like nobody dies and, nobody kills each other over some of the things that are going to be said? And it causes kids really to sort of delve into not only the ideas that these people have, but also the personal relationships that these people have. And I think I like it not only because it's a great puzzle, and I see these, like I have them do it in small groups, and then kind of like they go into like group challenge mode of like ours is better than yours.
Yeah.
But what I see is I see them starting to realize that we can't just look back at history and kind of like take everything at face value, which is what I think we want to do. We want to look back and say like, why is it these people didn't do this? It's so obvious they should have done this other thing. And then like we have to realize at some point that human beings, we ourselves even, react sometimes out of irrational reasons. Like there's emotion out there, and it can cause you to do some things which are not necessarily positive or in the end are going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they may sit there and say, hey, popes are generally supposed to be nice people, but that doesn't mean that if I put, this pope next to this, next to this Protestant reformer, that this is not going to get ugly.
Yeah.
Get heated. So that's kind of a fun one.
That one sounds awesome. Yeah. Okay. So going into period 2, what do you have like a major essay that you focus on or skill? And then same thing, favorite assignment?
Okay. So period 2 goes from 1648 all the way to 1815. So it encompasses a whole lot. And a lot of it is very political and ideological.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like this real change in the way that normal people live as well. It's going on in the background. Really what I start to do is I start to call audibles here,
Yeah.
This is if they sort of focused kind of question as much time working things. And then I'm going to move into the short answer question, which is the second part, or the first part of the writing, the second part of the exam, and move into those. Now, my students are mostly coming out of AP government, and they've had that with me, so they typically know how to do those short answer questions, just sort of like as a process, I guess. Mm-hmm. So that tends to be a pretty straightforward, nice and easy thing to do, which is nice for period 2 because it allows for the flexibility. If the kids are having problems with the primary sources, then I can spend less time on the short answer. kind of move it back a little bit. If they are getting the primary sources, then I can move the short answer up, and then maybe even start diving into into the long essay question, the LEQ, in period 2. So it allows for some movement there for me. It's I'm also sort of trying to continue to push the idea that we always want to be sort of looking at different reasons why people are saying things. There's a lot of good writings that come from this period where they take a side, and you can sort of see that they're kind of catering to something. You might have the motivations, I guess is what I'm saying, are going to be very evident, and then sometimes maybe not so evident.
Mm-hmm.
And I also try and introduce some more challenging things, something that someone might have written many years after the actual event, and they're sort of reflecting back on it, and introduce the idea that maybe people's perspective changes during life. Maybe people try and write their own narrative during life.
Yeah.
And so it's a good period for that. In terms of favorite assignments, some years an Enlightenment Salon goes over really well. Students take on the persona of an Enlightenment philosopher. They research that, they research their ideas, and then we sort of hold this dinner. Well, it's a salon,
Mm-hmm.
and so they sit around, and I've and they sit around. They have some snacks. They talk to each other about their ideas. You'll know pretty quickly whether this is going to work this particular year for your class or not, because it either is awesome or it is just absolutely miserable, and the kids are walking around like social anxiety coming all out of them. But it's good if they get into it, because they really start to see some of these different ideas that are there. They're going to lay the groundwork for almost the rest of the course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite ones for
period 2.
For period 2. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So period 3 you mentioned is one where teachers oftentimes get bogged down with things. So how do you make sure to get through period 3 in the right amount of time?
You mean try to get through period 3 in the right amount of time. That's always the problem. And it's like this deceptively short period, because it's only 100 years. You got to go from the Congress of Vienna to the beginning of World War I, and that's it. And it should be easy, but the world of 1815 and the world of 1914 are entirely different places. And so and so really this one requires an enormous amount of discipline, I guess, on the part of the teacher, because it's so easy, especially if you allow the textbook to guide you. Textbooks get really heavy during this period.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to talk about, every single ruler and every single movement. And you start to really, at this point, get the introduction of more like laws and, there's now a popular, there are now popular movements which are really showing up, because we've gotten industrialized and people are starting to have a voice, and now their sources are coming out far more so than in the first 2 periods, and so it becomes more complex. This one, period 3 is a problem. I don't have a good answer for period 3, other than there are some times where I've just had to say, we're gonna be moving through this a little bit quicker than I'd like, but we're gonna, and I'll be honest, I gamble with period 3 sometimes. When we get into the second industrial revolution, I there have been years where I've said, I'm gonna take a gamble that this is not going to be that heavily hit on the exam, and we're gonna touch it really quickly, but then we're gonna move on to try and make it so that, the Cold War isn't 1 week at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's tough. So do you have a favorite assignment for period 3?
Let's see, period three. Period three is always, like I said, it's always a weird and tough one.
Yeah. And the time of year doesn't help too. Everyone's just getting tired.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the thing. You hit that long stretch, and I guess this is the part that no one really tends to talk about. But so much of the way that you have to approach these things depends on the time of year. And period three is tough because this is the stretch between when they come back from winter break, and then there's spring break kind of sitting out there, and it's like the longest stretch of the year, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's uninterrupted, unless there's the random snow days. And there have been weeks where I've been out of school for a full week because of snow, and it's like, okay, well, there went that. What do I do here? Kind of thing. So yeah, it's a messy one, and consequently, and also from a teacher standpoint, it's one where I'm starting to get a little bit tired as well, as we go through that. And what I notice when I look back is that, like, my worst teaching ideas are in period three. Like, it's not the most creative part of my year. I really kind of, living in Pennsylvania, I even hate winter.
Yeah.
I'm waking up every morning going, oh, it's still cold, So it's not like this abounding, it's not like I'm like jumping in like the Renaissance. Like I could do the Renaissance for 3 months with all the great ideas that I have for that.
Yeah.
Beginning of the year, and I'm all excited. But man, period three, you're just like, okay.
Yeah. So with period 3, then do you end up sort of like having like mini lectures or, group work of different sorts?
I still try to mix it up. But by this point, halfway through the year, I know what's working with my kids, and so that's where the course tends to go. I tend to focus on teaching to them the way that it seems that they're getting things the best. And here I'm also throwing in now essay writing. How do you develop a thesis? How do you find information to back it up? How do you make sure that you explain that the information backs it up, rather than just sort of like throwing a few facts down on a piece of paper and saying, see, it told you so.
Yeah.
Which a lot of kids like to do.
You're like, no.
Yeah. But you have to still throw in some fun stuff, and one that's kind of fun. And a teacher, Pamela Wolf, taught me this one. It's sort of a workers' rally, and you have different groups that are trying to, sway the workers to take on their ideas. You have some conservatives, some liberals, some utopian socialists, some Marxists. If you want to have fun, you can throw anarchists in there. And the idea is that, here these workers have come together, and these different groups are trying to say, like, no, this is the way to get what you want out of the world. And,
Yeah.
And so I have these groups then sort of like figure out what the main message is and how to sell it rhetorically. And then, make some sort of I'm missing the word here, but some sort of poster, that kind of gets people riled up. And then for about the last 15, 20 minutes of class, let them go at it one at a time, like your best, like most passionate kind of get them riled up speech.
Yeah.
The kids have a lot of fun with it, especially the ones who are more outgoing, and more political. They'll get into this and they'll try and really push their idea, and people can get really into this one.
Really heated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fun. All right, so last but not least, period 4. What does period 4 look like for you? Favorite assignments?
Okay, so period 4 is, unfortunately, then this is just my opinion, and before I say this, I'm going to say that, like, my hat's off to people from the College Board who sat down and wrote the curriculum, because my God, I couldn't imagine going through and actually doing that.
Yeah.
But period 4 is kind of messy on the concept outline side. And part of it is a reflection of the fact that it's much easier to look further back into history and to notice big long-term trends. And,
Mm-hmm.
you can set up, like this period incorporates 180 years. And yes, we're going to call that one thing. And it might be going on the same time as another thing, but, the more you get towards the modern day, the more it becomes like, okay, then there was this, and then this happened, and then this,
Yeah, it's like we're not sure yet how we'll look back on that time period.
Exactly. Plus, you're dealing with some very, very, very big concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found with my students is that the beginning of period 1, World War I, the rise of totalitarianism, World War II, like they've been exposed to that they're familiar with. Some teacher along the line has had them fighting in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
And, they all know about trench foot and all that kind of stuff. They've heard of Hitler, which is unlike a lot of the people that we talked about. So now they're going like, oh yeah, I've heard of that guy. And so that part becomes a little bit easier because there's some familiarity with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also have found that once you or two, like no kids seem to really get the rest of it very well. And the Cold War can be a tough thing to teach, and especially because now I think no matter which class they've taken in the past, the teachers have gotten to the Cold War and kind of like are staring the end of the year in the face, or the upcoming AP exam. It's like, say, AP US or something. They may be staring that, and they're like, okay, we got to get through this fast. So, let's just do it. And so they're very unfamiliar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that it takes some time just to kind of like break it down and get them ready for it. Plus, at that point, from a skill standpoint, I'm starting to like pull together, like, don't forget about these multiple choice questions, and don't forget we got to do short answers, and document the DBQ. Now we're really sort of like hammering all of the DBQ content there, or the DBQ process, and the LEQs are there, and the themes that come into European history, like we've been sort of working with them all year, but this is where they're starting to like wrap them all up, and like, what's the big message here, and all of this. So there's a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
And it's, so this can be a tough one. My focus has always been do what is absolutely going to make the most impact with the kids for each thing, for each concept that you have to do. And that really depends. Some years I've had students that just, they can't write essays. And so at this point of the year, a lot of the activities are built around writing an essay.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some documents about, fill in the blank. I don't know, some documents about the Berlin airlift. I don't know. And now you're going to work through those. And so that's going to teach us a little bit about, Stalin and all that. But then it's also going to work on how do you devise a thesis based on what you have here. And what do you know about from what you read or what we talked about? How do you bring that in? So really that's almost the most varied period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one that really, staring down the gun of the AP exam, I'm trying to get the most impact out of the time that I have at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So and when you go into review period, is there something that's worked really well for you before? Some way to set up your review?
What I've always found difficult is like, and some teachers do this, and I really am amazed that they're able to, because I don't know how they do this. But the whole idea of like, let's just go over it all.
Yeah.
I don't know how you go over the stuff that it's taken you, 7 months to teach, 7 months, I guess, to teach the stuff, and like, okay, well, yeah, we'll just like do a month a day kind of thing and go through it. And so I've never found that really, really useful. what I do at the beginning of my review periods is I give kids some strategies for like big time review. Some kids sort of like to draw mind maps, and they like to sort of work out relationships between things. Some kids need to sit there and like, they really just don't know people's names and events and stuff like that. And they just need to sit there and like flashcard this thing. Like they know what they're talking about. There are other kids who really want to work on practicing essay writing, or practicing multiple choice, or all of that. And so what I kind of do is set up some parameters and some different options for them. And then my classroom becomes sort of like this like varied workspace. And they come in and they're doing whatever it is they know that they need to work on. But also, you know, whatever it is that they're able to process that day. I mean, there are some days where a kid comes in and they say, I know I need to sit here and I need to read about this, but I can't focus. So I'm going to do this other thing instead. And so there's, on any given day during the review period, there are 8 or 9 different things going on, either individually, small groups. I'm, you know, wherever people need me, although I'm going to stay out of their way if they just need to like do their thing. You know, it's all about sort of them getting ready.
Yeah.
Real long.
Yeah. What year are the students that you have in AP Euro?
They're mostly seniors.
Okay.
Mostly seniors.
Yeah. So at that point, they kind of know what they need and how they learn best. Hopefully.
Well, you think so.
Yeah.
A lot of them do. They do. But some of them really, they don't know, because, you know, some of them, this might be really the first big, like the first AP exam they've ever taken. And they don't really know how to pull it all together and turn it into something.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah. And then, you know, we spend a little bit of time on sort of like strategies. You know, how is it that you're going to approach this exam to try and get the best score you can, you know? And this is when I'm talking a lot about scoring points and stuff like that. You know, and I almost approach it from a, how do you do this well if you don't really know the answer or what to do with it? If we're talking about writing a DBQ, for example, and the kids get hit with something that is, I mean, if they get hit with something that they know well, like this thing's going to work out great for them.
Yeah.
But if they get hit with something that they don't know well, you know, or it's something that I gambled on and said, like, we'll just skip over that, and that happens to be the DBQ. Like, what do you do with that kind of thing, you know? And so, you know, it's going to be a lot of like this point that has to do with sort of like outside information. We're almost just going to toss that one out the window. You're not going to get it, but don't let that pull you down. You know, you got all these other points. Start out, use the documents, use them to create a thesis that you might not have known before you read the documents, but now that you've read them, you go like, it sounds like it works pretty well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah.
So do you have any last advice for teachers new to AP European history?
Yeah, I've got some advice. There are some definite things. If this is your first year teaching Euro, trust me, we've all been there. Okay, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be fun. You got to let yourself have fun with it, or else you are going to get overwhelmed by this course and everything that it has. There is a very active and very good Facebook group of AP European history teachers. Go on and ask to be invited to join that. There is also a Schoology group of AP European history teachers where we share lesson ideas and things like that. And that one is very, very, very good. And understand that there are resources out there that you can tap into. I have a whole bunch of videos on YouTube that I've made, documentary style videos that go into different concepts that are part of the AP Euro exam. And some teachers use those, students use those. Tom Ritchie has a whole bunch of videos that are sort of the same idea. Try and figure out where the resources are, and don't ever be afraid to ask for help, because we've all been there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking us through a year in the life of, Mr. Sargent's AP Euro class. Seems like a fun place to be.
Well, I'd hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, awesome. Thanks so much again for enlightening us on everything about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
I hope the rest of the conference is really good.
Yeah, there's lots of great things to watch. Trying to make time for all of it. All right.